I love how the media likes to put the cart in front of the horse. They like to believe that the salmonella came before the chicken. And they will say, oh, some Republican leaders tried to ban books. As if the leaders one day decided, you know what, we're going to ban books and we're going to convince the public that this needs to be done. When clearly it's the other way around. Especially during the pandemic, when most of the teachers wanted people to stay home and stay safe, unfortunately, they also stayed home with their children. And they were exposed to what their children had to learn at schools, which caused parents to become very concerned. And as you can see here, in the latest call from Republican leaders to ban certain books in school, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster, I love this name, is telling his state's Department of Education to investigate a graphic novel on queer identity being available at schools' libraries. He says that the content of the book is sexually explicit and pornographic, which is why whenever you see the media talking about Republicans wanting to ban books, they never show you the books they want to ban. Because I have seen on the internet a couple of parent-student conferences where the parents were reading from the books, and I guarantee to you I would get a terms of service violation if I were to even show some of the books that the children are supposed to read. But furthermore, and this is even more interesting, the teachers themselves asked the parents to stop while they were reading because it was very vulgar, very vile. So yes, this is why the parents want to ban the books. But what's even more interesting than this is the fact that the teachers do not understand free speech. Okay, like, why does it take from me from Eastern Europe to lecture leftist Americans on free speech? First of all, the Supreme Court of the United States clearly has a couple of exceptions to free speech. Some of them include you're not allowed to use incitement to violence, you're not allowed to use fighting words, you're not allowed to use blackmail. Like, all of these things are done by speaking. However, the Supreme Court is saying no to these and many others. And another one is obscenity. Now, obscenity is very interesting because if you look at what the Supreme Court said, it's very difficult to define. So you can have an artwork, for example, the statue of Venus, which even though is obscene because she has naked tits, it is still considered an artwork. But then you can have other forms of art, which may be very pornographic, which are considered to be obscene. So the judge said that it's a gray area where it's going to be up to another judge if the case presents itself to decide if something is obscene or not. So for example, you're not allowed to have a shirt with very ushi-kushi anime girls that are naked and walk with that into a kid's playground, right? Because that would be considered obscene, even though you can make the argument that, well, it's artistic, it's Wuzaki-chan or something, right? Like, it doesn't stand. So when it comes to free speech, obscenity is definitely not part of it. At least it's a gray line. And I have seen the books, okay? Like, I have seen the books in question. I don't think there's any judge on planet Earth that would look at that and they would say, you know what, I want my kids to look at those. Like, no. If you were a person that went into a playground and showed those books to children, you would probably be taken away by the police, right? Now, with that out of the way, to consider that banning a book from a school library or from a teacher's curriculum is censorship means that you're either mentally challenged or you just don't understand censorship. Censorship is when you have internet activists who look at Alex Jones and they want his material to be banned from everywhere. Like, if possible, if they would have their wish, a person wanting to see Alex Jones' content would be completely unable to because he would not find it anywhere. Like, it would be the platform, every corporation would not sell it, every company would not distribute it. The only way you could have Alex Jones' content is if you were to actually see him in person. Right? And this is where the censors come in, right? Like the fact checkers who decide what is misinformation, like they would like that information to be completely removed from the eyes of the public. Like there should be no way possible for a citizen to have access to that information, okay? That is censorship. That is what censoring means. Now, they are using the private sector to do it. So we're not talking about censorship in the legal sense, right, where you would go to prison for doing it. No, they find a way to launder the censorship through the private information, like getting Amazon to ban books, getting social media corporations to deplatform. Like that's what censorship is when we talk about. However, it is completely different than getting a book removed from a school library. Why? Because the children can still have access to the book. Like there is nothing stopping their parents from purchasing that book and reading it with their children. No one is asking for social media or for Amazon to take these books away so that children don't have access to it. By all means, like if you're a parent who thinks it's appropriate for your children to have access to these queer theory literature or whatever, like no one is making the argument that you should be stopped. Like it's your child, your decision, okay? I find it very peculiar and bizarre that you'd want your child to be exposed to that. However, right, no one is saying that the books themselves should be censored. And furthermore, the children themselves can have these books on the school ground. And going even further, you can have like an off-school activity where, you know, children have a book reading club and they go and read those books with their parents' permission, of course. Now, if you want to make the argument that removing a book from the school curriculum is censorship, well, then Christianity is censored in the United States because the Holy Bible doesn't get to be taught in schools, right? Like it's a separation between church and state. And I understand America is a very Christian, heteronormative, patriarchal country, and yet the Holy Bible is not being taught into schools, right? So it's the same logic. Like no one is stopping kids from bringing a Bible to class with them. No one is stopping kids from making a Bible book seminar. No one is stopping kids from doing all of these things outside of school. So why is it important? Well, because when something is taught in school, it's not something that you get to choose. Like when you go to school and the teacher tells you have to study this, well, you have to read it, you have to memorize it, you have to internalize it, and then you have to reproduce it on a test. This is completely different than having the freedom to choose. When you go to school, you are constrained by the school curriculum to study exactly what is given. In some cases, there's very little wiggle room. You have to reproduce to the teacher exactly, and you have to agree with the teacher if you want to get a good grade. So this is why people do not agree. Like, for example, I wouldn't want Alex Jones's videos to be taught to my children because I'm on the very fringe belief that kids should go to school in order how to learn to do math, science, and those types of things. If I consider that my child should learn about Alex Jones, I can do that at home. There's nothing stopping me. Or, you know, like, so, because I don't want Alex Jones to be taught in schools, that doesn't mean that I want to censor Alex Jones. But this is the very bizarre argument that I see leftists making all over social media. Whenever you say, well, you guys are trying to ban this or you're trying to deplatform this, and they're like, oh, yeah, but like, why don't you condemn right-wingers for pulling books from schools? Because that's not censorship, right? Like, the school curriculum that is functioning on a completely different way than free speech. The school curriculum is what kids are forced to learn. Like you're talking about forcing someone to learn. Now, we're fine with forcing someone to learn that 2 + 2 = 4, or forcing someone to learn about how to read and write, but we're not fine with people forcing to learn ideologies or views on life and stuff like that. For example, you guys, the left, are not fine with people learning the Bible. Like, I don't hear you trying to change the Constitution in order to remove the separation of church and state and, you know, teach kids Bible study in class. So, obviously, right-wingers aren't okay with sexually explicit books being taught. So, this is how the conversation should go, because I see a lot of people on social media being completely bewildered when the left brings up, it's like, oh, well, you want to cancel books? It's like, no, they don't. And it's a clear distinction between trying to cancel a book and just not wanting it to be taught in school. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you in the comment section. Take care.